Well, I think the breadth of his understanding of education, it was only as I read more, I realised that he had this very wide vision of what education was about, and that what he was trying to do was to see that the people, the students who went through his school were educated in those sorts of ways. I think John Lack, in his history of Footscray, identified three very significant figures in the life of Footscray. John Gent was one, a minister was the second one, and Arch was the third. Now, I had no idea that he was on that sort of level in his in the way that the community of Footscray held him. And I knew, of course, that he was principal of the technical school, and he was an important man, but I didn't know that he had had such a huge influence on Footscray and the way Footscray developed. Yes, I was proud of my father and proud of the name Hoadley, but embarrassed for myself because I didn't want attention drawn to me. I didn't want people to think that I had something special because my father was Arch Hoadley. Short word is very happy. Um, we were we were just part of the gang of kids that went to Geelong Road State School, and we just enjoyed being together. But when I think of that time, the dominant thing in the back of my mind is the war, and we were very much aware of the war, and we were involved in various ways of raising money for the war. I can remember the barometer on the wall on the blackboard in the school classroom as we gradually worked to build up more and more uh, towards a target. And I had a round of families that I would visit to get their war saving stamps and things like that. So that was in the background, and we had air raid shelters, we had air raid drills and so on. But as a boy, we just took those. We didn't understand what was happening on the other side of the world. But it goes back to the rugby school in England and how that grew out of the concepts of muscular Christianity, where the gymnasium was important, the, the physical workouts on the field were important, and these were carried through into Wesley when he was at Wesley at the turn of the century. And Methodism saw the person, the male, as being a strong, resilient, courageous person. And an important part of developing that was the physical education and the testing of the body in a variety of ways. So that it was seen as a part of the disciplines of Methodism, that the body was disciplined as well as the mind was disciplined. he'd trained as a mining engineer, and he was working for BHP in Whyalla at one stage. And the family led me to understand that he was never really happy underground. And I think he was looking for a new adventure. He'd certainly developed an interest in geology, and although his strength as a mining engineer would have been more in the metallurgical line, I think he just responded as some of his colleagues did to Mawson's invitation, and was very keen to go. He battled with the education department about the curriculum, because the director of technical education, and remember that secondary education was only brought in 1910, and the concept was that there would be junior technical schools feeding people into apprenticeships. And the director of technical education had a very instrumental view of education, that what we would train people with was the subjects that they needed for their apprenticeships. Well, my father had a much broader view, and he fought hard to have a much broader curriculum that included the full range of the subjects that would broaden or would introduce students to the studies that they could then build on in whatever direction they went. But not only in terms of their studies, but in terms of their life. He was much more concerned about preparing people for life than he was just for the job that they might do at the end. He was constantly battling to get more buildings. The education department were very hamstrung in terms of the way they released money for buildings. The council had to make the cases, but they also had to raise the money for all the equipment that would have to be fitted into them, and in particular, my father had difficulty getting the workshops that were necessary to complement the practical training, because the junior technical system hadn't sort of coped with the idea of extensive workshops in different trades and so on. As well as the breadth of the curriculum, he was very strong about the depth of the curriculum. He was very keen that students actually in core subjects went deeper. He could see that in the future students would need more in those core disciplines than they did now. And in addition to that, he also was very keen on what he called the brainy boy. He was always looking for the boy with the larger intellect to try and make sure that he could develop. And his vision was that all of the people who came out of his school would become leaders in some way in their professions or in their businesses or in their trades. So for that, they needed to have these in-depth studies, extracurricular activities, and one of the things he did was to set up the inter-technical school sports competitions, because he was fostering all of these extracurricular sporting teams and a number of other extracurricular activities. One, of course, was his own particular interest in music. He was asked by some of his students in 1919 if he would become their scoutmaster, because their scoutmaster, who happened to be a great friend of my father's and on the school council, had died as a result of the Spanish flu epidemic. and the troop was without a scouter. And being an Antarctic man, it must have been a logical thought of the boys. But he said, no, that's not what I want to do. And I don't know why that was so. But they came back a year or so later and he changed his mind. And he was just converted. He just, he caught Baden-Powell's vision of what the outdoor life and the challenges that living in the outdoors would mean for a boy, and in developing the wider interests and the wider skills and the appreciation of the environment that were, I think, something that that just rang bells for him when he could see that it complemented what he was doing in the school. When I was doing my reading for the book, I was trying to find things that my father had written, and the Footscray Historical Society were very helpful. I found from the very early days a lot of the articles that he wrote in the Footscray Advertiser, trying to persuade the community that education was important. When in 1916 the school was first established, it was a result of a small group of far-sighted members of the Footscray community, but there wasn't a great deal of support for it. There was enough, but not a great deal of support. People were happy for their boys to go on into secondary school up to age 14, and after that then fees were required, and so boys left school, and that was not the culture. Well, my father had to set about changing the culture. So for the first 10 years, the Footscray Advertiser is full of his different ways of trying to persuade the parents and the Footscray community that education was really important, and education was not just for now, but for the boys' longer-term future. He made sure that the school was open to the community. He would construct ways of, or devise ways of opening the school and inviting the community in, or inviting them to their annual speech nights or their annual concerts or any performance plays that the boys managed to put together, so that they were always community. Whatever the school did was a community event, and the parents would come, but they would also bring other members of the community. So that it was a very significant, a significant time